Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully, everybody is well, having a good Tuesday. Alrighty, so Friday, we were getting caught up on missing things and doing your ecological footprint. So, most of you have completed that and have sent that in. And again, some of you sent me couple of you sent me just one screenshot when you were supposed to send me two. And basically, your response, the statement that you made, was based on the summary. So I was more interested in seeing what the summary was than the page with the planets on it, because the summary actually outlined what activities, specific activities you were involved in, and based on that, you were supposed to decide um, what areas you could kind of tighten up on in order to save the planet, make it a more sustainable place. That's our objective always, is to make the planet more sustainable for your future, for your children's future. So you've done your personal footprint. So we're going to look at, with Mr. Sneeds today, 5.11. Again, Canvas has taken the units just in a specific order. So we're going to go in the order that Canvas has them set up. So you've gone from 5.1 to 5.11, and I think it's going to do 12. Let me go back and look at this again. So like I said, we're going to follow the outline of Canvas and do it in that order. So, okay, so we've done 5.1. We almost finished with 5.11, and we'll do 5.12 next. And then we'll go back to 5.3 through 6 and 14. So that'll be our next set. So they've grouped them according to topic. So this one is all sustainability. Next one will be plants as food, and then animals as food. They've grouped those together, and then natural resources. Okay, so the whole Unit 5 is been kind of rearranged according to topic. All righty, so half the class is here. But you know what, folks? Y'all are here, and you're on time, and you deserve to start on time. And so we're going to go ahead and all right, and this was already in your playlist. So, so the things that you did on the website were to look at how you use food, how you use housing, transportation. There's some more folks. Let me kind of hold off a little bit. Goods and services, water, and waste. So make sure you go through and click on all of those, because those were the things that you clicked on as you went through that activity. And then, so this, again, this is the activity that you performed, and you looked at all of these type of things that you normally do in your day-to-day living. Alrighty, so now that we got some more folks in, good afternoon, if you just came in. We are in 5.11, and we're going to go ahead and watch the video for that.
We'll be covering topic 5.11, which is the concept of an ecological footprint. So the ecological footprint is a way to measure the total amount of land that's taken up by the consumption of an individual or of a group. So we'll discuss how it's calculated, so what factors go into it, and we'll also discuss ways to lower ecological footprint. Our objective for today is to be able to explain the variables that are measured in the ecological footprint, also to look at how resource consumption and waste production factor into ecological footprint, And then finally, our suggested science practice for the day is to be able to explain what data imply or illustrate about an environmental issue. So ecological footprint is the measure of how much a group or person consumes expressed in an area of land. So if we take a look at this image here, it's a nice graphic that we can refer to as we run through the factors. So the factors are going to include land that's required for food production. So how much land is required to grow all of the food that you eat. Also the raw materials you use, so the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the house you live in, all of those come from raw materials that require land to be harvested and then turned into a product. We also have housing. How much space does your actual house take up? Then there's electricity production. So we have to mine coal and burn it to produce electricity, or mine natural gas and burn that to produce electricity. Even if we're getting our electricity from solar panels or from wind turbines, those still require raw materials. So we have to account for the land that's required for our energy production. And then finally, we also have to account for waste. So all of the waste that we produce, the garbage, this is going to go into a landfill. That takes up land as well. So all of those factors go into the ecological footprint for either an individual or for an entire group. Now we'll discuss the difference between ecological footprint and carbon footprint. So remember that ecological footprint is a measure of all of the consumption for group or individual, but expressed in terms of land. So the units usually used with ecological footprint are GHA, or global hectares. Now this refers to biologically productive hectares, and a hectare is about 2.47 acres. Then we have a carbon footprint. A carbon footprint is measured in tons because it's the total amount of carbon dioxide that's produced from the activities and the consumption. So we can actually look here at my ecological footprint and my carbon footprint. So my ecological footprint is 2.6 global hectares, and my carbon footprint is 4.2 tons of CO2 per year. So that's all the land required to support my lifestyle, my level of consumption, the food I eat, the place I live, the travel I do. And it's also the total amount of carbon dioxide released by all of my consumption and activities. So all of the travel that I do, all of the food I eat, my home, the raw materials that are used in my goods. That's what these numbers represent. We'll actually be calculating our own carbon footprint and our own ecological footprint in class, and there will be a link later on in this video for you to check that calculator out ahead of time if you're interested. So now let's take a little bit closer look at the factors that determine carbon footprint. So it's going to be all of the carbon dioxide released from material goods. So all of the goods that a person or group consumes require carbon dioxide emission. There's carbon dioxide emitted when the goods are shipped, when they're transported. There's carbon dioxide that often is emitted from the packaging that they come in. There's carbon dioxide emitted from the harvesting of the natural resources and the production of the goods themselves. So pretty much every step of the process requires the emission of carbon. Then we have food production. So farmers use equipment to clear their land. Those run on fossil fuels. That's going to produce carbon dioxide. Farmers also use equipment to harvest and ship their crops. That's going to emit CO2. And we can look at energy use. So when you use gasoline in your car, that emits carbon dioxide. Heating your home is usually burning natural gas. That's methane, CH4. So the mining of that releases methane. That's another form of carbon. Electricity also contributes to your carbon footprint because we have to burn coal or natural gas, which emits more CO2. Now we'll talk about factors that can increase or decrease the carbon footprint of an individual or group. So affluence is a big one. The more affluent you are, the more wealthy you are, the higher your carbon and ecological footprint. That's because you're more likely to have a larger house, which takes up more space, but also more raw materials. You're likely to travel more, so you're going to use more gasoline. The more affluent an individual or society is, the more goods they consume, so the more raw materials they need. There's also going to be a huge correlation between meat consumption and ecological and carbon footprint. That's because, remember, it takes way more energy, way more land, and way more water to produce 1 pound of meat protein versus a pound of plant protein. So all things equal, meat production takes far more land input and energy input. And then finally, fossil fuel usage is a huge one. So the amount of travel, that's going to greatly increase someone's carbon footprint. The amount of electricity they use, the amount of plastic they use. Plastic requires fossil fuels to be manufactured and packaged and shipped, and so that's going to result in an increase in carbon footprint and ecological footprint as well. So for factors that decrease carbon footprint, renewable energy decreases carbon footprint. Anytime that a country or a group of individuals can use more renewable energy sources like wind and solar, they're going to decrease their carbon footprint and their ecological footprint. Using public transportation is great as well because that's going to minimize gasoline consumption. So that minimizes CO2 production and your carbon footprint. A plant-based diet, the more plants you eat and the fewer animal products you eat, the less your carbon footprint and the less your ecological footprint. And then finally, just less consumption overall. So buying recycled goods or buying used goods or not buying goods at all is going to decrease your carbon footprint because that's fewer raw materials that have to be used, and so less of a carbon and ecological footprint. And finally, we put this all into context with a look at the global ecological footprint. So we can also measure ecological footprint expressed in number of Earths, meaning how many Earths would it take to sustain the lifestyle for a given individual or a given person. Now, for reference, the United States, if everyone in the world lived like the average American, we would need 5.1 Earths to support that lifestyle. So we would need 5.1 Earths worth of resources if the entire world were going to consume the way that Americans consume. And so you can see we're using quite a bit more than our fair share. For reference, the entire global ecological footprint is 1.85 Earths. So what that means is right now, all of humanity is collectively using 1.85 times what the Earth can generate in a year in 1 year. So we're using almost double what the Earth is capable of producing and supporting in a given year. So we're already, as a global society, living in an unsustainable way when it comes to our ecological and carbon footprints. If you're interested in seeing what your ecological and carbon footprint are, there's a link at the top of the screen right now. You can click on that, take a short quiz, and the website will generate your ecological footprint. It's a really interesting activity. We'll be doing it in class as well, but you're welcome to check it out. Our suggested science skill for Practice FRQ 5.11 today is to explain what data illustrate about an environmental issue. So take a look at this graph, and I want you to describe one factor that accounts for the difference in carbon footprint between the United States and Uganda. Then I want you to explain one environmental consequence of this factor.
Okay. Since you all did your carbon footprint, I'm going to use that instead of doing the FRQ as usual. So
Full Sail University's art and design programs embrace design practices built around emerging technologies. It's art outside the box.
All right. So
courses focus on
so again, you've done your carbon footprint, and I want you to go ahead and read through all of these. And then the AP Classroom has already been set up for 5.11 if you haven't already done so. So you can go ahead and do that. So from here, we'll go to 5.12. I'll save the video for 5.12 or tomorrow. So you have done your footprint already. So make sure if you haven't already submitted that, please make sure you do. It's kind of late. Actually, today it's due today. After today, it's late. So make sure you've done that. And again, if you haven't already done so, you're submitting both the first page, the results page, which has the pictures of the Earth on it, and then the summary page, which has the breakdown of what all the areas that you have used. And then underneath that, you're going to answer the two questions about 2 areas of your lifestyle that you would change based on your score. So in other words, you have to show the score in order to analyze the score. Okay. All right. So after that, we're going to go on to sustainability and talk about this. Next week, Wednesday is Earth Day. So on next week, Tuesday, I'm going to give you an assignment to do that'll take up the 2 days, but it's directed at having you be economically wise to what's going on in order to sustain your environment. So go ahead and read this one. I will go ahead and initiate 5.12 in the AP Classroom as well for those of you who are already finished and need to get ahead. Again, we're a month away from the AP exam. If you are taking the exam, you should be going back over all of these the end tips on all of these units, give you a what you need to be focused on as far as that particular topic is concerned. So if you were taking the exam, I would start spending some time looking at these tips because I believe it's like about 4 weeks away. It's kind of mid May. Okay. So that's just a heads up on that. Okay. Alrighty. So again, I'm not doing the FRQ from the video to your actual submission of your footprint will suffice in place of that. And then go ahead and do the AP Classroom activities for 5.11. And I'm going to go ahead and launch 5.12. Okay. And let me give a quick look at the grade book, see if I need to tap anybody on the shoulder. Progress reports go out next week. So if you are missing anything, please make sure that you get it in before the end of the week so you can have the best score represented on your progress report. About 3 of you are missing your Tragedy of the Commons. You know who you are. Open here. Oh, have I sent it? All right, Brooklyn, I sent you a message. Please check it in the chat. Hey, All right, so again, this unit entails 5.1, 5.11, and 5.12. So those AP Classroom scores will be linked together in one submission folder. For me. Where did she go? Mm. Okay, folks, time to go, time to go, time to go. So I'll see you all tomorrow. And we'll look at 5.12. Okay,